Good afternoon. My name is John Ault. I'm a Navy chaplain. I've been doing this for a little bit over 19, almost 20 years. Kind of talk a little bit about chaplaincy, what it is, what it isn't, what does the Navy do. There's a lot of similarities just among our colleagues across the services. One of the things that, especially as I'm talking to new chaplains or people going into the chaplain corps, this is kind of talking about our endorsement and what's unique about that. The chaplain corps, the Navy chaplain corps, is not a religious organization. That may seem kind of like an oxymoron, right? It's a government organization in which they bring in specific people from various religious organizations, and we are expected to represent faithfully our faith group. Like Dr. McAlexander, the endorsing commission, expects me as a chaplain when I'm doing religious services to faithfully represent the Christian churches, to maintain that standard no matter what I'm doing, but also I'm working alongside imams, rabbis, Catholic priests, Methodist pastors, Lutheran pastors across the spectrum to care for the broad needs of our people. And so it's a really unique opportunity. I remember when I ran the chapel in Yokosuka, Japan for about 3 years. One of the coolest things, and one of the Army chaplains and I were talking about this yesterday, it was incredible in that service. So like when I was in my church back in Indiana, when everyone came to church, there was an expectation. We're all kind of in general on the same page. We're all part of this, this congregation, and we have this kind of certain, these statement of faith, and we do things a certain way. But I'm running this chapel in Yokosuka, and I look around the room, and I'd be like, well, there's a Lutheran there. There's an Assembly of God's family there. I even had a couple of people that was kind of checking some stuff out, maybe some Mormons, some people from Latter-day Saints in the back, and across the spectrum of various faith groups, some Christian, some not. And then we get together and say, this is really cool, because in heaven, we're not going to have First Baptist on one corner in heaven, and we're going to be worshiping the God. I said, this is one of the things we get to do as military chaplains, not just in the Navy, is when we're doing our religious service, when I'm doing a Christian churches of Christ service, I welcome everyone to hear the gospel. And it really breaks down, and one of the things I love about this is it breaks down denominational differences. I just got done with a 9-month deployment on the USS Theodore Roosevelt, an aircraft carrier. And we have various services and stuff, but the same thing on the carrier. People would just come to service to have a safe place, to be encouraged, to have something positive, to be spiritually strengthened in the middle of the ocean, where we're working 24/7 around the clock, literally jets landing and taking off above our head as we're doing our worship service, and we get to gather together. But as a Navy chaplain, although there's a lot of similarities, there's a little bit of uniqueness in our environment from the other services. We all have our various ways in which we do that. But a lot of what Chaplain Moore said, we are there with them. They don't fly me out on Sundays to an aircraft carrier. We deploy with them. When I'm with the Navy, also serves with the Marine and the Coast Guard as well. Kind of think about the sea services. We're there with them. When I was a younger chaplain and I wasn't quite so had quite so many injuries and miles on me, I would get out there, much like Chaplain Moore was talking about, running the obstacle courses, being where they were, being involved, being on submarines. We've served with submarines, with the Marines, been in a couple of joint environments when I was in Kuwait, served 8 years in Japan, been on both coasts. We've really, when they talk about, joining the military to see the world, our family truly has. If people are watching this, or if you're taking this back to other people, the environments in which we get to work around the world, nothing I ever imagined when I was beginning ministry in my church in Indiana. My wife and I look back and think about 20-some years ago when I started ministry, 32 years ago when we got married, and thinking as a mid-20s couple, hey, we got our lives planned out, and we're gonna do these things, and nothing looks at all how we had planned it almost 30 years ago. And that's a good thing, because God has done so much better when we follow this calling in the chaplaincy or whatever ministry calling we've been in. God will do more with what we ever expected when we follow that calling. And I can say that's true for our family. Probably the big things too is we are there when the bad things happen. we have a lot of fun. Running the obstacle courses, there are times where I was out on PT with the Marines, and the Marines will be doing their chants and stuff, and I tell you what, the Marines are not always appropriate in what they say, and they don't tone it down when chaplains are around typically. They may apologize afterwards, but then they keep saying, you probably imagine soldiers are saying what they're going to say. But when we're out there with them, my best days of ministry in the Navy, and other chaplains, you can chime in on this too, my best days in the ministry of the Navy are when the worst things happen. And they don't come find us when those things happen. We're already there. When someone dies, they don't go find the chaplain's already either there or on the way. When we go to war, we don't follow them down the road. We're already there with them. When we deploy, they don't wait till we get to where we're going and fly us in. We start at the same pier with everyone else. We live with the people we serve with. That is probably the biggest difference from going from the church ministry and having to wait for people to get done with work and having to go find where everyone was. Don't have to go find anyone. You're already right there in the middle of it. So the Chaplain Corps is definitely an environment in which we live, eat, breathe, serve, cry, laugh with everyone that we are serving, whether they would ever step in the doors of our church or not. So that's probably the biggest things I want to share about the Chaplain Corps. And like I said, the Navy's got some unique environments in which we operate, but I'd say across the spectrum of the Chaplain Corps that are represented here, we probably share that common thread.